Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they don't sound like someone worth following. Your words either command respect or quietly erase your authority. Every sentence you speak is teaching people how to treat you. And right now, whether you know it or not, you are either leading or being ignored. This audiobook will show you how leaders actually speak. Not louder, not longer, clear, certain, grounded. If you change how you speak, you change how people respond. And when people respond differently, your entire life changes. This starts now.
Chapter 1. Your voice is already teaching people how to treat you. Before you finish a sentence, people have already decided where to place you. Not based on your resume, not based on your intentions, not based on how smart you are, based on how you sound. That's the uncomfortable truth, and that's the starting point. Every time you speak, you are teaching people how to treat you. You are setting terms. You are signaling expectations. You are declaring, without saying it out loud, whether you see yourself as someone to be followed, negotiated with, ignored, or overridden. You have a choice. Most people never realize they're making it. They think communication is about words, vocabulary, logic, being right. They believe if they just explain better, people will understand. If they just add more detail, people will comply. That's wrong. People don't listen to words. They respond to certainty. That's the key. Your tone creates hierarchy before your content ever arrives. Your pace establishes authority before meaning has time to land. Your presence, or lack thereof, decides whether people lean in or tune out. And here's the part you need to hear clearly. This is happening whether you intend it or not. There is no neutral voice. There is no just talking. Every interaction is a positioning moment. When you speak quickly, you position yourself as nervous. When you soften statements, you position yourself as unsure. When you trail off at the end of sentences, you position yourself seeking approval. When you over-explain, you position yourself defending your right to speak. You have a choice. Leaders don't wait to be granted authority. They speak as if authority is already theirs, not arrogantly, not aggressively, calmly, casually, as a fact. They don't sound like they're hoping to be followed. They sound like they expect it. That expectation is felt immediately, before logic, before agreement, before resistance. People don't listen to words. They respond to certainty. Watch what happens in meetings. The person who speaks first, slowly, without rushing, immediately shifts the room, even if what they say is obvious, even if it's simple, even if it's wrong. Why? Because certainty creates gravity. Uncertainty creates noise. And most people are drowning in verbal noise. They add disclaimers, they stack qualifiers, they cushion every statement. I might be wrong, but this is just my opinion. I'm not sure if this makes sense, but those phrases teach people something. They teach people to doubt you before you've even finished speaking. You don't need their permission. That's the mindset shift. You don't need permission to speak clearly. You don't need permission to be direct. You don't need permission to take up space with your voice. It's not about confidence as a feeling. It's about discipline as a behavior. That's the key. It's not about how you feel inside. It's about how you structure what comes out. Leaders don't wait to feel confident. They speak with structure, and confidence follows. They speak with certainty, and alignment follows without being asked. And when it doesn't, they don't collapse. They don't explain. They don't chase. They hold their position. You have a choice. Think about how you speak when you're trying to convince someone versus how you speak when you're stating a fact. The difference is obvious. Your body changes, your tone changes, your pace changes. Leadership voice lives in the second mode. Not convince me, not please agree, but this is how it is. People don't listen to words. They respond to certainty. This is why two people can say the same sentence and get completely different reactions. One gets respect, the other gets ignored. The sentence wasn't the difference, the certainty was. Here's the discipline you must start practicing immediately. Before you speak, decide your position. Not your argument, your position. Are you asking, are you offering, or are you stating? Most people default to asking even when they don't need to. They phrase statements like questions. They soften directives into suggestions. They hide behind politeness to avoid discomfort. That avoidance costs them authority. You don't need their permission. When you speak, speak from the assumption that your words deserve to be heard, not because you're special, but because you've decided to take responsibility for what you say. Responsibility sounds different than hope. Responsibility is calm. Hope is rushed. Responsibility ends sentences. Hope leaves them open. People don't listen to words. They respond to certainty. This doesn't mean being loud. It doesn't mean being harsh. It doesn't mean dominating conversations. It means being clean. Clean sentences, clean tone, clean endings. No excess, no leakage. It's not about personality. It's about discipline. That's the key. You can be introverted and authoritative. You can be quiet and commanding. You can be soft-spoken and respected. But you cannot be unclear and expect to be followed. Clarity is leadership. Vagueness is surrender. Every time you add unnecessary words, you dilute your message. Every time you rush, you signal anxiety. Every time you hedge, you train people to question you. You have a choice. Start noticing how people respond to you before you finish talking. Do they interrupt you? Do they talk over you? Do they redirect the conversation? Do they ignore your suggestions until someone else repeats them? Those are signals, not insults. Data. And the data is pointing back to your delivery, not your worth. That's empowering, because it means you can change it. Today. You don't need a new personality. You need a new standard. The standard is this: when you speak, you mean it. When you speak, you expect to be heard. When you speak, you are not auditioning for approval. You are declaring position. People don't listen to words. They respond to certainty. Say it again until it sinks in. People don't listen to words. They respond to certainty. Your voice is not just sound. It's instruction. It's direction. It's leadership training for everyone around you. Train them well. You mastered awareness. You now see that every word you speak is positioning you. Now it's time to remove the habit that destroys authority faster than anything else.
Chapter 2. Stop explaining yourself. Most people don't realize this, but the moment you start explaining yourself, you're already losing ground. Not because explanations are bad, but because unnecessary explanations are admissions. They admit uncertainty. They admit fear. They admit you don't fully trust your own position, and people feel that immediately. You have a choice. You can speak from clarity, or you can speak from defense. Leaders don't speak defensively. They speak decisively. That's the key. Over-explaining does not make you sound smart. It makes you sound unsure. It makes you sound like you're asking the listener to validate your conclusion rather than accept it. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. If your point were strong, it wouldn't need protection. Clarity beats justification, always. Watch how authority collapses in real time. Someone states an idea. Then they keep talking. They add context, then more context, then an example, then another example, then a caveat, then a disclaimer. By the end, the original point is buried under insecurity. They think they're being helpful. They think they're being thorough. They're actually teaching the room not to trust them. You don't need their permission. You don't need to earn the right to speak by explaining everything in advance. You don't need to preempt every possible objection. That behavior doesn't create alignment, it creates doubt. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty.
Certainty sounds like conclusions. Uncertainty sounds like explanations. That's the difference. Leaders lead with the decision, not the process, not the backstory, not the internal debate. They say what is, they say what will happen, they say what needs to be done, and then they stop. Clarity beats justification, always. This is not about being rude. This is not about being dismissive. This is about respecting your own position enough to state it cleanly. It's not about intelligence. It's about discipline. That's the key. Intelligent people often over-explain because they can see 10 angles at once. They want to show their thinking. They want to prove they've considered everything. Leaders don't show their thinking unless asked. They deliver the result, because results are what people follow. Here's a rule you need to adopt immediately. If no one asked why, don't answer why. Say that again. If no one asked why, don't answer why. Every unprompted justification weakens your authority. You have a choice. You can speak in outcomes, or you can narrate your insecurity. Most people narrate their insecurity without realizing it. I just want to explain my thinking. Let me walk you through how I got here. I know this might sound strange, but none of that helps you. Clarity beats justification, always. Leaders assume their words can stand on their own. They assume they don't need to be defended unless challenged. They assume the listener is capable of asking questions if they want more. That assumption alone creates power. You don't need their permission. Here's a real-world example. Two people propose the same idea. Person 1 says, I think we should consider changing the timeline because if you look at the data, and obviously there are a few factors, but historically we've seen that. Person 2 says, we're changing the timeline. The current one isn't workable. Who sounds like a leader? Same idea, different posture. One is asking to be evaluated, the other is setting direction. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. Now, when explaining is necessary, leaders explain with control. They don't spill, they don't ramble, they don't chase approval. They explain after the conclusion, not before it. Conclusion first, explanation second, only if required. That order matters. That's the key. When you reverse the order, when you explain first and conclude last, you sound unsure. You sound like you're building up courage as you talk. Leadership speaks from the top down, not the bottom up. Here's the behavioral discipline you need to practice. Next time you're about to explain something, pause. Ask yourself one question. Am I explaining to inform or to be accepted? If the answer is acceptance, stop. You have a choice. State the point, end the sentence, hold the space. Silence after clarity is strength. Silence after rambling is awkward. Learn the difference. You don't need their permission. Another mistake people make is explaining emotions. They justify how they feel. They rationalize reactions. They defend boundaries. Leaders don't do that. They state boundaries. They state standards. They state expectations. They don't apologize for clarity. Clarity beats justification, always. This doesn't mean you never explain. It means you explain intentionally, not reflexively. Reflexive explanation is a habit. Intentional explanation is a tool. Tools are used when needed. Habits run you. That's the key. If you want to sound like a leader, stop narrating your internal process. The room doesn't need it. The meeting doesn't need it. The conversation doesn't need it. They need direction. Direction is simple. Direction is clear. Direction is brief. It's not about sounding impressive. It's about being effective. You have a choice. You can fill space with words, or you can fill space with authority. Most people are uncomfortable with silence, so they talk. Leaders are comfortable with silence, so they're listened to. Practice this. Say your point. Stop talking. Let the silence work. You'll feel the urge to explain. That urge is fear, not logic. Don't obey it. You don't need their permission. Over time, people will start asking you questions. That's when you explain. That's when your words land harder, because now they're requested, not imposed. Requested explanations increase authority. Unrequested explanations destroy it. Clarity beats justification, always. This also doesn't mean you don't explain. It means you explain intentionally, not reflexively. Reflexive explanation is a habit. Intentional explanation is a tool. Tools are used when needed. Habits run you. That's the key. If you want to sound like a leader, stop narrating your internal process. The room doesn't need it. The meeting doesn't need it. The conversation doesn't need it. They need direction. Direction is simple. Direction is clear. Direction is brief. It's not about sounding impressive. It's about being effective. You have a choice. You can fill space with words, or you can fill space with authority. Most people are uncomfortable with silence, so they talk. Leaders are comfortable with silence, so they're listened to. Practice this. Say your point. Stop talking. Let the silence work. You'll feel the urge to explain. That urge is fear, not logic. Don't obey it. You don't need their permission. Over time, people will start asking you questions. That's when you explain. That's when your words land harder, because now they're requested, not imposed. Requested explanations increase authority. Unrequested explanations destroy it. Clarity beats justification, always. You are not here to convince everyone. You are here to lead clearly. That means trusting your own words enough to let them stand. You mastered awareness of how your voice positions you. Now you've removed the habit that weakens it the fastest. Next, we tighten the delivery itself.
Chapter 3. Confidence is vocal, not emotional. Most people misunderstand confidence. They think confidence is a feeling. They think it's something you wait for. They think once you feel confident, you'll sound confident. That belief keeps them weak. Confidence is not how you feel. It's how you sound, regardless of how you feel. That's the key. Emotion fluctuates. Structure commands. You can feel nervous and sound grounded. You can feel uncertain and speak with clarity. You can feel pressure and still deliver calmly. Leaders don't wait for emotional alignment before they speak. They rely on structure. They rely on discipline. They rely on control. You have a choice. You can let your emotions leak into your voice, or you can let your voice regulate your emotions. One creates authority. The other destroys it. Most people speak how they feel. Leaders speak how they decide. Emotion fluctuates. Structure commands. Listen carefully to people under pressure. Their voices speed up. Their pitch rises. Their sentences run together. They rush to get words out before doubt catches up. That sound tells the room everything it needs to know. This person is not settled. This person is unsure. This person can be challenged. Not because of the content, because of the delivery. People don't listen to words. They respond to certainty. Certainty is slow. Certainty is calm. Certainty is controlled. You don't need their permission. You don't need to sound excited to be convincing. You don't need to sound passionate to be respected. You don't need volume to have power. You need pace. Pace is everything. Fast speech signals urgency and anxiety. Slow speech signals control and authority, even when the message is simple, especially when the message is simple. That's the key. A leader can say something obvious and still command the room because of how it's said. This needs to change. Slow, grounded, finished. No rush, no apology, no emotional spike. Emotion fluctuates. Structure commands. Here's the discipline you need to adopt.
Stop trying to sound confident. Start sounding controlled. Control your pace. Control your pauses. Control your endings. Confidence lives in those mechanics. It's not about bravery, it's about discipline. That's the key. When you slow down your speech, 3 things happen. First, you give your words weight. Second, you give yourself time to think. Third, you force others to listen. Speed helps no one but your nerves. You have a choice. Next time you feel pressure, do the opposite of your instinct. Instead of speeding up, slow down. Instead of filling space, pause. Instead of reacting, breathe. Then speak. You'll feel exposed at first. Silence feels dangerous when you're used to hiding behind words. But silence is power when it's intentional. You don't need their permission. Here's another truth. Confidence is not volume. Loudness is often compensation. True authority is quiet and steady. It doesn't rush, it doesn't spike, it doesn't wobble. Think of the calmest person in the room, the one who speaks last, the one who doesn't interrupt, the one who doesn't fight for airtime. When they speak, people listen. Why? Emotion fluctuates, structure commands. They've mastered vocal control, even if they don't know it consciously. You can do the same. This is not about changing who you are, it's about changing how you deliver. Introverted? Good. Reserved? Even better. Leadership voice doesn't require charisma, it requires containment. Containment means your emotions stay inside your body, they don't spill into your tone. You can feel intensity without sounding intense. You can feel urgency without sounding frantic. That's discipline. That's the key. Here's a practical exercise. Record yourself speaking, not performing, just explaining something simple. Then listen. Do you rush? Do you trail off? Do your sentences end upward like questions? Those are emotional leaks. Fix them mechanically. Slow the pace by 10%. Lower the pitch at the end of sentences. Insert intentional pauses. You don't need to feel confident to do this. You just need to decide to do it. You have a choice. Every time you speak, ask yourself one question. Am I letting emotion drive or structure lead? If emotion is driving, pull it back. Emotion fluctuates, structure commands. Another mistake people make is trying to sound confident by adding force. They push words, they harden their tone, they overcorrect. That's not confidence, that's tension. True confidence is relaxed control. Relaxed shoulders, steady breath, even tempo. You don't need their permission. When you speak slower, people may interrupt you less. When you pause, people may lean in. When you lower your volume slightly, people may quiet themselves to hear you. That's influence. And influence doesn't come from emotion, it comes from regulation. It's not about excitement, it's about discipline. That's the key. This chapter is about removing the myth that confidence starts inside. It doesn't. Confidence starts in the voice, and the voice trains the mind. When you sound calm, your body follows. When you sound steady, your thoughts organize. When you sound certain, people respond accordingly. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. You can't control how you feel in every moment, but you can control how you sound. That's power. That's leadership. You have a choice. Stop waiting to feel confident. Start practicing vocal discipline. Speak slower. Pause longer. End sentences fully. Let structure command. Emotion fluctuates. Structure commands. You've removed the need to explain yourself. You've learned to speak with control instead of feeling. Now it's time to eliminate the language that quietly asks for approval. Chapter 4. Remove permission-seeking from your language. Most people don't realize how often they ask for permission without saying the word permission. They hide it in their language. They bury it in soft phrases. They leak it out between words. And every time they do, they give away authority. You have a choice. You can speak like someone who's waiting to be approved, or you can speak like someone who's already decided. That's the key. Permission seeking doesn't sound dramatic. It sounds polite. It sounds reasonable. It sounds harmless. I think, maybe we could, I just wanted to say, it might be a good idea if. Those phrases feel safe. They feel cooperative. They also tell the listener something very specific. I'm not sure I'm allowed to take up this space. I'm not sure my words deserve weight. I'm open to being overruled. People hear that instantly. You don't ask to be taken seriously. You decide. That's the repetition you need to internalize. You don't ask to be taken seriously. You decide. Leaders don't soften observations. They state them. Leaders don't hide behind qualifiers. They speak cleanly. They don't say, I think this isn't working. They say, this isn't working. Same information, completely different impact. People don't listen to words. They respond to certainty. Permission-seeking language destroys certainty before it has a chance to land. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most of this language is unconscious. It's a habit built from fear of being wrong, fear of being judged, fear of being disliked. It's not about weakness, it's about conditioning. But leadership requires deconditioning. You have a choice. You can keep defaulting to safety, or you can choose clarity. Clarity always feels sharper at first. That's the key. Let's break this down. When you say, I think, you shift the focus from the observation to yourself. You make the statement about your opinion instead of about reality. Leaders don't need to announce that they're thinking. Thinking is assumed. When you say, maybe, you introduce doubt. Even if you don't feel doubt, the word creates it. When you say just, you minimize your own contribution before anyone else can. That's permission seeking. You don't need their permission. It's not about arrogance, it's about ownership. It's not about being right, it's about being clear. That's the key. Leaders state observations as facts, not suggestions. They speak as if what they're saying deserves consideration by default. They don't apologize for clarity. Now listen carefully. This does not mean being rigid. This does not mean refusing feedback. This does not mean pretending you're infallible. It means removing unnecessary self-doubt from your language. There's a difference between humility and hesitation. Humility is quiet. Hesitation is noisy. Humility listens. Hesitation asks for approval. You have a choice. Here's a real-world shift you can make immediately. Instead of saying, I think we might need to revisit this, say, we need to revisit this. Instead of, maybe I'm wrong, but this feels off, say, this feels off. Instead of, I just wanted to check in, say, I'm checking in. Shorter, cleaner, stronger. You don't ask to be taken seriously. You decide. You'll notice something interesting when you do this. People may push back more directly. That's not a problem. That's respect. Clear statements invite clear responses. Soft statements invite confusion. That's the key. Permission-seeking language often comes from wanting to be liked, from wanting to avoid conflict, from wanting to stay safe. But leadership isn't about being liked first. It's about being trusted. And trust comes from clarity. People trust those who sound sure of what they're saying, even if they're later proven wrong. People distrust those who hedge every statement, even when they're correct. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. This is why removing permission-seeking language can feel uncomfortable at first. You're removing a buffer. You're standing behind your words. That's leadership. You don't need their permission. Another common mistake is turning statements into questions.
This deadline is tight, right? We should probably do this, don't you think? Those upward inflections hand power away. They invite others to decide for you. Leaders ask questions intentionally, not reflexively. They decide first, then they invite input. That order matters. That's the key. Here's the discipline. For the next week, audit your language. Listen for these words: think, maybe, just, kind of, sort of, a little. Every time you catch one, remove it. You don't need to replace it with something stronger, just remove it. What's left will be enough. You have a choice. This is not about becoming aggressive, it's about becoming clean. Clean language reflects clean thinking. Messy language reflects internal negotiation. Leadership requires internal resolution before external communication. That's the key. When you decide what you believe, your language follows. When you haven't decided, your language leaks uncertainty. Decide first, then speak. You don't ask to be taken seriously. You decide. Say it again. You don't ask to be taken seriously. You decide. As you remove permission-seeking from your language, you'll notice your presence change. People will interrupt you less. They'll question you more directly, and they'll respond with clarity instead of confusion. That's progress. That's respect. You're not here to be approved. You're here to be understood. And understanding requires clear statements. You've learned to control your voice. You've removed unnecessary explanations. You've stripped out permission-seeking language. Now it's time to change how you structure decisions themselves.
Chapter 5. Speak in decisions, not in discussions. Most conversations fail for one reason. They never end. They loop, they circle, they revisit the same ground again and again. And every time they do, authority leaks out of the room. You have a choice. You can speak in discussions or you can speak in decisions. Leaders speak in decisions. That's the key. Discussions feel productive. They feel collaborative. They feel safe. Everyone gets to talk. Everyone gets to weigh in. But without a decision, discussion is motion without movement. And motion without movement is stagnation. Movement creates authority. Say it again. Movement creates authority. Leaders close loops. They don't orbit ideas. They don't leave conversations open-ended unless there's a clear reason. They don't confuse exploration with leadership. They explore privately. They decide publicly. That order matters. You don't need their permission. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that leadership means constant consensus, that if everyone talks long enough, the right answer will magically appear. That's not leadership. That's avoidance. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. That's the key. A decisive sentence, even an imperfect one, creates momentum. Momentum builds trust. Trust builds authority. Indecision does the opposite. When you end a conversation without a decision, you teach people something. You teach them that nothing changes. You teach them that words don't matter. You teach them that meetings are performances, not drivers. People stop listening. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. Certainty sounds like an ending. We're doing this. This is the direction. This is the next step. Not, let's keep thinking about it. Not, we'll revisit this later. Not, let's circle back. You have a choice. You can leave things open to avoid discomfort, or you can close loops and carry the weight of leadership. Leadership has weight. That's the key. Speaking in decisions doesn't mean ignoring input. It means knowing when input is complete. Leaders listen. Leaders ask questions. Leaders gather information. And then they decide. They don't outsource the decision to the room. They own it. You don't need their permission. Here's what speaking in discussions sounds like. Let's talk through this. What do you all think? There are a lot of perspectives here. Here's what speaking in decision sounds like. I've heard the input. This is what we're doing. We're moving forward with this approach. This is the call. Same people, same information, different outcome. Movement creates authority. This applies everywhere, at work, at home, in relationships, in your own mind. If you can't decide, others won't follow. Indecision creates anxiety. Decisions create relief, even when they're tough. That's the key. Most people avoid decisions because they fear being wrong. They fear being blamed. They fear being responsible. But leadership is responsibility. You have a choice. You can be responsible for direction, or you can be responsible for nothing. Nothing is easier. Nothing is safer. Nothing is forgettable. Leaders are remembered because they move things forward. Movement creates authority. Here's a practical shift you need to make. At the end of every conversation, ask yourself, what decision did I just make? If the answer is none, you didn't lead. You facilitated, you hosted, you participated, but you didn't lead. That's the key. This doesn't mean every conversation ends with a final permanent decision. It means every conversation ends with a next step, a direction, an action, a closure. We're testing this for 2 weeks. We're moving forward with option B. We're pausing this until Friday. Those are decisions. Silence is not a decision. Delay is not a decision. Discussion without closure is not leadership. You don't need their permission. Another trap people fall into is explaining decisions instead of stating them. They say, after considering all the factors. They say, given the feedback. They say, because of the constraints. Stop. State the decision first. Then, if necessary, explain. Conclusion before context. That's the key. When you lead with the decision, people orient themselves. When you lead with discussion, people drift. Drift kills momentum. Momentum creates authority. Here's the discipline. When you speak, ask yourself, am I moving this forward or keeping it open? If you're keeping it open out of fear, close it. You have a choice. This will feel uncomfortable at first. People will resist. They may push back. They may question you. That's normal. Leadership invites reaction. Avoidance invites apathy. I'll say it again. Leadership invites reaction. Avoidance invites apathy. People don't follow perfect leaders. They follow decisive ones. Even when the decision changes later, the act of deciding builds trust, because it shows you're willing to carry the weight. That's the key. You don't need their permission to decide. You need their clarity. And clarity comes from closure. As you practice this, you'll notice something shift. Conversations become shorter. Meetings become sharper. People come to you with solutions instead of problems. Why? Because they know you decide. Movement creates authority. Say it again. Movement creates authority. You've removed hesitation from your language. You've learned to deliver with control. Now you're learning to close loops and move forward. Next, we strip away the habit that undermines all of this, speaking too fast.
Chapter 6. Slow down or be overlooked. Most people talk too fast, not because they have too much to say, but because they're afraid of losing the floor. They rush, they cram, they fire words like they're running out of time, and in doing so, they give up control. You have a choice. You can let speed expose your nervous system, or you can use pace to command the room. That's the key. Speed communicates nervousness. Pace communicates control. Say it again. Speed communicates nervousness. Pace communicates control. The faster you speak, the less people hear. The slower you speak, within reason, the more weight your words carry.
This isn't theory, this is human behavior. When someone speaks fast, we assume they're uncertain, anxious, or trying to convince. When someone speaks slowly, we assume they're grounded, confident, and in charge. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. Certainty has a tempo. And most people never learn to control it. You don't need their permission. The one who controls the pace controls the room. That's the repetition you need to burn in. The one who controls the pace controls the room. Think about it. In any conversation, someone sets the rhythm, someone decides how fast things move, and whoever does that holds the power. If you let others rush you, you follow. If you slow things down, you lead. That's the key. Fast talkers often believe they're being efficient. They're not. They're overwhelming. They're hard to track. They force listeners to work harder than they should. Leadership reduces cognitive load. It doesn't add to it. Slow speech is not lazy. It's generous. It gives people time to process. It gives your words space to land. It signals that you're not afraid of silence. Silence is power when it's intentional. You have a choice. You can fill every gap with sound, or you can let silence do the heavy lifting. Most people are terrified of silence. They rush to fill it because silence feels like exposure. Leaders use silence as a tool. That's the key. Strategic pauses force attention. When you pause, people look up, they lean in, they wait. Why? Because pauses create anticipation. They signal that what comes next matters. You don't need their permission. Here's what this looks like in practice. Instead of saying, "We need to change this approach because it's not working and the data shows," you say, "We need to change this approach." Pause. It's not working. Short, calm, controlled. The pause did more work than the explanation. The one who controls the pace controls the room. Another common mistake: people speed up at the end of sentences. They rush the landing. Their voice lifts, their words blur. That's nervousness. Leaders land sentences firmly. They slow down at the end. They let the point settle. That's discipline. It's not about confidence as a feeling. It's about control as a behavior. That's the key. Here's a simple exercise. Next time you speak, reduce your speed by 10%. Not half, not dramatically, just enough to feel slightly uncomfortable. That discomfort is where authority begins. If it feels too slow to you, it's probably just right. You have a choice. People who rush think they'll lose attention if they slow down. The opposite is true. Speed loses attention. Pace commands it. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. Certainty never rushes. Another discipline: pause before important points. Don't announce them, don't telegraph them, just pause. Then speak. That pause tells the room, pay attention. You don't need their permission. This applies in meetings, presentations, conversations, even arguments. When emotions rise, slow down. When pressure increases, slow down. When you feel the urge to rush, that's your cue to pause. Emotion wants speed. Leadership chooses pace. That's the key. The person who stays calm while others rush automatically rises in status, not because they dominate, but because they regulate. Regulation is leadership. Unregulated speed is reactivity. You have a choice. Control your breath, control your tempo, control your endings. End sentences downward. Let silence follow. The silence may feel long to you. It won't feel long to them. Silence after a clear statement creates gravity. Silence after rambling creates discomfort. Learn the difference.
The one who controls the pace controls the room. Say it again. The one who controls the pace controls the room. As you slow down, you'll notice people interrupt you less. They'll wait. They'll adjust to your rhythm. The room will follow your tempo. That's influence. That's authority. You don't need their permission. This chapter isn't about speaking slowly all the time. It's about speaking intentionally. Speed when appropriate, pace when it matters. But never rush out of fear. Fear speaks fast. Leadership speaks steady. That's the key. You've learned to speak in decisions. You've learned to control your delivery. Now it's time to remove the clutter that dilutes your impact.
Chapter 7. Eliminate verbal noise. Most people talk too much, not because they have something important to say, but because they're uncomfortable with emptiness. So they fill it. They fill space with They fill space with you know. They fill space with like, so, and I mean. And every filler teaches the listener something. This isn't important. You don't need to pay attention. I'm not fully in control. You have a choice. You can fill silence with noise, or you can fill silence with authority. That's the key. Fillers dilute impact. They soften edges. They break rhythm. And over time, they train listeners to tune you out. People don't listen to words. They respond to certainty. Certainty doesn't ramble. Certainty doesn't fidget verbally. Certainty doesn't apologize with sound. Less sound, more weight. Say it again. Less sound, more weight. Verbal noise is not harmless. It's a signal. It signals nervousness. It signals lack of preparation. It signals a mind that hasn't decided yet. And leadership requires decision. You don't need their permission. Most people believe silence is awkward, that silence is empty, that silence needs to be rescued. That belief keeps them weak. Silence is not empty. Silence is dominance when used intentionally. That's the key. Think about the last time someone asked you a question and you answered immediately, without thinking, without pausing. What did that signal? Reactivity, not leadership. Now think about someone who pauses before answering, just a beat, maybe two. What does that signal? Consideration, control, presence. The one who speaks less is often perceived as knowing more. Less sound, more weight. Leaders remove verbal clutter. They strip language down to what matters. They don't decorate thoughts with noise. They let silence frame the message. You have a choice. You can rush to fill gaps, or you can let gaps create gravity. Gravity holds attention. Noise disperses it. That's the key. Let's be clear. This is not about being robotic. This is not about being cold. This is about being intentional. Every word should earn its place. Every sound should serve a purpose. If it doesn't, remove it. You don't need their permission. Here's a practical exercise. Record yourself speaking for 2 minutes, any topic. Then listen. Count how many fillers you use. Count how often you start sentences without knowing how they'll end. Count how often you talk just to avoid silence. That's your baseline. Now, cut it in half. You don't need to eliminate everything at once, just reduce. Less sound, more weight. Another mistake people make is repeating themselves because they're unsure they were heard. They say the same point 3 different ways. They circle it. They pad it. That's noise. If your point is clear, repetition should be intentional, not accidental. Repetition for emphasis is power.
Repetition from insecurity is weakness. That's the key. Say it once, say it cleanly, then stop. Let the silence do the work. You have a choice. Silence after a strong statement forces others to respond. It shifts pressure outward. It creates space. Silence after weak speech creates discomfort. That's why people rush to fill it. Build the habit of strong statements. Then let silence follow. You don't need their permission. Another form of verbal noise is over-connecting ideas. So basically what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is, those phrases announce insecurity. They suggest you're unsure your message landed. Trust your words. Trust the listener. Clarity doesn't need a narrator. Less sound, more weight. This chapter is about discipline, not perfection. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Every filler you remove strengthens your presence. Every pause you hold builds authority. Over time, people will adjust. They'll slow down to match you. They'll listen harder. They'll respect the space you command. That's leadership. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. Certainty is quiet. Certainty is measured. Certainty doesn't beg for attention, it assumes it. You don't need their permission. As you eliminate verbal noise, you'll notice something else. Your thinking will sharpen. Because sloppy speech comes from sloppy thinking. Clean speech forces clean thought. That's the key. You've learned to slow down. You've learned to control pace. Now you're learning to speak less and mean more. Next, we refine how you end your sentences, because endings determine impact.
Chapter 8. Say fewer words with more finality. Most people lose authority at the end of their sentences. They start strong, they sound clear, then their voice lifts. It turns statements into questions, decisions into suggestions, authority into uncertainty. You have a choice. You can end sentences like you're asking, or you can end sentences like it's decided. That's the key. Leaders end sentences downward, not upward. Upward inflection asks for agreement. Downward inflection signals conviction. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. And certainty lives at the end. End it like it's decided, because it is. Say it again. End it like it's decided, because it is. Finality is one of the most overlooked leadership skills. People focus on what to say, not how to finish saying it. But the ending determines how the message lands. Weak ending, weak impact. Strong ending, strong authority. You don't need their permission. When your voice lifts at the end of a sentence, you invite debate, even when you don't mean to. You open the floor. You give others the option to override you. Leaders close the door unless they intend to open it. That's the key. This isn't about being close-minded, it's about being clear-minded. Finality signals that you've already thought this through, that you're not processing out loud, that you're not fishing for approval. You have a choice. You can think out loud, or you can speak from conclusion. Leadership lives in conclusions. End it like it's decided, because it is. Here's how this shows up in real life. This is the plan versus this is the plan. Same words, different world. One invites resistance, the other sets direction. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. Finality doesn't mean you'll never change your mind. It means that in this moment, the decision stands. That's leadership. You don't need their permission. Another mistake people make is adding tag questions. Right? Okay? You know? Those tags dissolve authority. They pull power back to the listener. Leaders don't add tags unless they want input. If you want agreement, ask. If you want action, state. That's the key. Here's a discipline to practice. Record yourself again. Listen specifically to your endings. Do they trail off? Do they lift? Do they fade? Now practice ending sentences firmly. Lower pitch, slower pace, full stop. You don't need to sound dramatic. You need to sound finished. Less sound, more weight. End it like it's decided, because it is. This will feel uncomfortable at first. You may worry you sound harsh. You don't. You sound clear. Clarity can feel sharp to those used to softness. That's okay. You have a choice. Choose clarity. Finality closes debate. It saves time. It prevents endless back and forth. It tells people where you stand. Leadership is visible because it stands somewhere. That's the key. Notice how often people soften endings to avoid responsibility. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be challenged, so they leave exits. Leaders remove exits. They speak as if they're willing to stand behind their words, because they are. You don't need their permission. This doesn't mean you can't invite discussion later. It means you don't accidentally invite it through weak delivery. Intentional openness is strength. Accidental openness is weakness. End it like it's decided, because it is. As you master finality, your speech will become shorter, cleaner, more impactful. You'll say less, and what you say will land harder. That's leadership. You've removed verbal noise. You've slowed your pace. Now you've learned to end with conviction. Next, we confront a trap that destroys authority faster than any technical mistake.
Chapter 9. Stop trying to be liked. Most people don't lose authority because they're incompetent. They lose it because they're trying to be liked. They soften everything. They cushion truth. They trade clarity for comfort. And they wonder why no one takes them seriously. You have a choice. You can speak to be approved, or you can speak to be respected. Leaders choose respect. That's the key. Approval-seeking language repels respect. It doesn't create connection, it creates imbalance. When you prioritize being liked, you teach people that your boundaries are flexible, that your standards are negotiable, that your words can be bent. People respond accordingly. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. Certainty is not concerned with popularity. Respect first. Connection follows. Say it again. Respect first. Connection follows. Most people believe connection comes from being agreeable, from being warm, from being easy. That's backwards. Connection comes from trust. Trust comes from consistency. Consistency comes from clarity, and clarity requires discomfort. You don't need their permission. When you try to be liked, you avoid saying what needs to be said. You delay decisions. You water down feedback. You turn standards into suggestions. You call it kindness. It's not kindness. It's avoidance. That's the key. Leaders are not cruel, but they are clear. They don't confuse empathy with appeasement. They can care deeply and still speak directly. They don't hide behind niceness. Niceness is not leadership. Respect first. Connection follows. Here's what approval-seeking sounds like. I don't want to upset anyone, but I hope this is okay. I'm sorry, I just feel like... Those phrases put the listener in control. They frame you as someone seeking acceptance instead of offering direction. You don't need their permission. Leaders don't ask to be liked. They accept that not everyone will be. That acceptance frees them. You have a choice. You can chase comfort, or you can build trust. Comfort is temporary. Trust is durable. That's the key. Let's be clear about something important. This is not about being cold. This is not about being harsh. This is not about dismissing people. This is about refusing to trade clarity for approval. When you say what needs to be said, some people will feel uncomfortable. That's not failure. That's leadership. Discomfort often pleases the cost of progress. You don't need their permission. Here's a real-world shift you can make immediately. Before you speak, ask yourself, am I saying this to be liked or to be useful? If it's about being liked, pause. Then say what's useful. That's the key.
Leaders prioritize clarity over comfort. They don't enjoy tension, but they don't avoid it. They understand that temporary discomfort prevents long-term dysfunction. Avoidance feels kind in the moment. It creates resentment later. Clarity feels sharp in the moment. It creates respect later. Respect first, connection follows. Watch how people respond to leaders who stop chasing approval. They may test you, they may push back, they may resist at first. Then something shifts. They stop guessing where you stand. They stop negotiating everything. They stop trying to read between the lines, because there are no lines to read between. That's leadership. You don't need their permission. This chapter is about identity. Are you someone who needs to be liked to feel safe, or are you someone who can tolerate disapproval to do what's right? That answer shows up in your voice. It shows up in your pacing. It shows up in your boundaries. It shows up in your decisions. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Say it. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline to say the thing. Discipline to hold the line. Discipline to let others feel how they feel without rescuing them. That discipline creates authority. People don't follow people-pleasers. They follow leaders who are fair, firm, and clear. Respect first, connection follows. You've learned how to end sentences with conviction. You've stopped trying to soften everything. Now it's time to build the underlying framework that makes leadership speech effortless.
Chapter 10. Authority lives in structure. Most people speak as if thoughts are free-floating. They start in one place, drift to another, circle back, repeat. They call it conversation. Leaders call it chaos. You have a choice. You can speak like everyone else, or you can speak with structure. That's the key. Structure creates trust. Say it again. Structure creates trust. When your words are organized, people hear competence before content even lands. They don't wait to figure out your point, they feel it immediately. Authority arrives in the form of clarity. Leaders don't ramble, they frame, they sequence, they categorize. You don't need their permission. Here's the truth most people ignore. Rambling kills influence faster than any mistake. You can be wrong and still be respected if you are clear, but if your speech is disorganized, even the truth sounds like chaos. Structure communicates preparation. Structure communicates thoughtfulness. Structure communicates confidence. That's the key. Most people think leadership is about the words themselves. Wrong. Leadership is about the delivery system, the container, the framework, the structure. Without structure, even brilliant ideas get lost. You have a choice. You can dump every thought at once, or you can package it in a way that lands. Structure creates trust. Let's break it down. A simple framework has 3 components. Introduction, tell them what you're going to say. Content, deliver the point clearly, concisely, with examples. Conclusion, tell them what you just said and why it matters. That's it. Every leader uses some version of this, consciously or not. Every speaker without structure leaves the listener guessing. You don't need their permission. Here's how structure works in real life. Compare these 2 statements. Disorganized. So I was thinking maybe we could change the timeline because the data seems like it might support that, and there are a few factors we haven't considered, but it's complicated. Structured. We need to adjust the timeline. Data shows the current plan won't work. By moving deadlines, we ensure success. That's why this change matters. Same content, completely different authority. Structure creates trust. When you speak in frameworks, people stop guessing about you. They know you are in control. They know you've thought about it. They know what action to take next. Chaos invites doubt. Structure commands respect. That's the key.
Another way people sabotage themselves is by overloading with information. They cram points without hierarchy. Every point feels equally urgent. Nothing stands out. Leaders prioritize, they sequence, they lead the listener through the argument. You have a choice. You can overwhelm or you can guide. Structure creates trust. The listener follows the path you create, and if the path is clear, they trust you. This also applies to conversations, not just speeches. Even a 5-minute update benefits from structure. Don't just talk, frame, lead, conclude. Here's a practical tool, the 3-point rule. No matter what the conversation, aim for 3 key points, no more, no less. Deliver them in order, summarize at the end. 3 points, order matters, summary seals it. That's structure. That's leadership. You don't need their permission. Let's address a trap, over-explaining under the guise of structure. Some people think structure means packing in everything they know. Wrong. Structure is selective, it's intentional, it's precise. Too much detail dilutes authority. Strategic detail enhances it. Structure creates trust. Another principle is signposting. Use short statements to guide the listener. Here's what matters. Let me break this down. Now the critical point is, signposts aren't filler. They orient the listener. They reinforce control. They communicate authority before content lands. You have a choice. You can assume everyone will follow you, or you can guide them deliberately. That's the key. Structured speech also reduces stress. When you know your framework, you're less likely to ramble, less likely to panic, less likely to over-explain. You don't need their permission. Your audience doesn't know your thought process. They judge by what they hear. Structure tells them you are competent, prepared, and confident. Structure creates trust. Here's a real-world behavioral drill. Before every meeting, outline your 3 points, write them down, speak in that order, summarize at the end. Notice how people respond differently. They pay attention, they nod, they act. Framework matters more than eloquence, more than jargon, more than volume. That's the key. Even in challenging situations, structure keeps you grounded. When someone interrupts, you return to your framework. You don't ramble, you don't panic, you realign to your points. You have a choice. You can react emotionally, or you can respond structurally. Structure creates trust. The final element is repetition within structure. Reiterate critical points at the start, middle, and end. This reinforces clarity without rambling. You don't need their permission. Structure also allows flexibility. Once the framework is clear, you can adapt content inside it. Without structure, adaptation looks like chaos. People don't listen to words, they respond to certainty. Structure communicates certainty. That's the key. Every time you speak, ask yourself, do I have a clear framework? Will the listener know my key points without guessing? Am I guiding them intentionally? If the answer is no, restructure before speaking. You have a choice. Chaos or clarity, noise or structure, hesitation or authority. Structure creates trust. Say it again. Structure creates trust. This principle underpins everything we've covered so far. Control your voice, slow down, eliminate fillers, end with finality, stop seeking approval. Structure binds all these habits into a cohesive whole. When your speech has structure, authority becomes obvious, presence is undeniable, leadership is felt even before the content is fully processed. You don't need their permission. Think about every high-impact leader you've seen. Their words are rarely verbose. They're organized, clear, purposeful. Frameworks guide every sentence. Structure creates trust. You've learned to stop chasing approval. You've learned to speak with pace, finality, and clarity. Now you're learning to organize it into a framework that communicates competence instantly. Next, we'll explore how nonverbal cues amplify structured speech because words alone aren't enough.
Chapter 11. Ask fewer questions, make more statements. Most people confuse curiosity with leadership. They think asking more questions signals intelligence. They believe it creates engagement. They assume it makes them likable. It does none of that. You have a choice. You can lead by asking endless questions, or you can lead by making clear statements. That's the key. Leaders declare before they invite. Say it again. Leaders declare before they invite. Questions are powerful tools, but only when used intentionally. Random questions without direction surrender the frame. They make you a participant instead of a leader. When you ask too much, you're inviting others to lead for you. You're giving away authority. You're saying, "I don't fully know where we're going, please guide me." You don't need their permission. Statements, on the other hand, establish direction and expectation. They set the tone. They define the parameters of action. They communicate certainty. Leaders don't wait for consensus before they speak. They decide, declare, and then invite input if necessary. That's the key. Let's dissect this. Here's what questions often sound like. What do you think we should do? Is this okay with everyone? Do you agree that this approach works? All of these shift responsibility outward. They place the frame in someone else's hands. They dilute authority before it even lands. Now, here's what statements sound like. We will take this approach. This is the next step. This needs to happen by Friday. Same content, entirely different effect. One invites leadership from others, the other asserts yours. Leaders declare before they invite. You have a choice. You can frame your words as questions, or you can frame your words as commands dressed in clarity. That's the key. Questions have their place. Strategic questions can guide reflection, provoke thought, and confirm alignment. But when they're reflexive, habitual, or meant to soften your presence, they destroy authority. You don't need their permission. Here's a real-world example. Imagine you're in a meeting. You say, "Do we think this plan is feasible?" Notice what just happened. You just handed the decision over. You made yourself a participant. You surrendered frame. Now imagine you say, "This plan is feasible. Here's why." You've just established direction. You've positioned yourself as the leader. And now, if you want, you can invite questions strategically. Leaders declare before they invite. Let's talk about phrasing. Certain words make statements feel like questions. Should we? Could it be? Would it make sense? All of these subtly erode authority. They add doubt. They create space for others to question unnecessarily. Remove them. Replace them with declarative language, strong verbs, clear subjects, specific actions. You have a choice. You can hedge your statements, or you can anchor them in authority. That's the key. Statements also set expectations. They tell people exactly what you intend. They communicate timelines, responsibilities, and standards. Questions leave all of that floating. People don't listen to words. They respond to certainty. Statements create certainty. Questions often create ambiguity. You don't need their permission. Another trap is overusing rhetorical questions. You don't want to fail, right? Who wouldn't want this outcome? These are attempts to manipulate. They sound clever, they feel persuasive, but they often come off as insecure. They rely on the listener to affirm you instead of projecting confidence. Leaders avoid unnecessary rhetorical questions. They lead with statements. They allow facts, data, and action to speak for themselves. Leaders declare before they invite. You have a choice. You can ask to validate yourself, or you can state to set direction. That's the key. There's another subtle point. Questions often mask indecision. People ask to stall. They ask to buy time. They ask to defer responsibility. Statements mask nothing. Statements commit. Statements clarify.
You don't need their permission. Here's a practical exercise to rewire this habit. Record yourself for one meeting or conversation. Count how many questions you ask versus statements you make. If questions outnumber statements, you're surrendering frame. Next, convert half of those questions into statements. Not aggressively, not arrogantly, simply declaratively. Notice the change in perception. Leaders declare before they invite. You have a choice. You can continue asking to be approved, or you can declare to be followed. That's the key. Statements also set follow-up easier. People know what's expected. There's less room for misinterpretation, less room for chaos, less room for argument. Questions often create more questions. Statements create action. You don't need their permission. Even in casual conversations, this principle matters. Instead of asking, "Do you want to do this?" say, "We're doing this. Let's schedule it." Instead of asking, "Is this okay with you?" say, "This works. Let me know if there's a conflict." Notice the difference. One establishes momentum, one invites delay. Leaders declare before they invite. Finally, know this. Habit matters more than talent. Asking questions is easy. Making statements is hard when you fear pushback. But pushback is temporary. Authority is lasting. You have a choice. You can protect yourself from pushback, or you can demand clarity and set the direction. That's the key. Your goal isn't to be agreeable. Your goal isn't to get validation. Your goal is to move people forward. Your goal is to establish certainty in every interaction. Leaders declare before they invite. You've learned to structure your speech. You've learned to slow down and end with finality. Now it's time to control the frame itself by speaking less in questions and more in statements. That control multiplies all the other skills you've built. Next, we'll explore how to eliminate hesitation entirely so that your statements hit with maximum authority.
Chapter 12. Own the room before you speak. Most people think leadership starts when they open their mouth. It doesn't. Presence begins before words. You have a choice. You can walk into a room and blend in, or you can walk in and own it. That's the key. Authority enters the room first. Say it again. Authority enters the room first. What does that mean? It means posture matters. Stand tall, shoulders back, feet grounded. Every inch of your body signals confidence before a single word is spoken. When presence is strong, words land harder. That's the key. Look around the room. Who do people notice first? Not the loudest speaker, not the fastest talker, the one who occupies space fully and intentionally. You don't need their permission. Stillness is another weapon. Most people fidget. They pace. They shift weight. They drum fingers. They betray insecurity. Leaders move with purpose. They pause. They breathe. They anchor themselves. Authority enters the room first. Your eyes are powerful tools. Eye contact communicates confidence, clarity, and command. Scan the room slowly. Meet eyes deliberately. Don't dart. Don't avoid. Hold gaze where it matters. You have a choice. You can look away and hope attention follows, or you can meet it head-on and claim it. That's the key. Even your breathing affects authority. Fast, shallow breaths betray nerves. Calm, controlled breaths project stability. People feel it. They mirror it. They respond to it. Presence before words amplifies everything you say. Say it again. Authority enters the room first. Let's break it down in practice. Step 1. Posture. Stand like you own your space. Not aggressive, not tense. Grounded, relaxed, controlled. Step 2. Stillness. Resist the urge to fidget. Hold positions briefly. Pause before speaking. Pause before moving. Use stillness as emphasis. Step 3. Eye contact. Sweep the room deliberately. Make people feel seen, but not challenged. Balanced, commanding, calm. Step 4. Breath. Slow, steady, intentional. Anchor yourself in the air you inhale. Authority begins here. You don't need their permission. Presence is the silent amplifier for every skill we've discussed so far. Structured speech, finality, fewer questions, more statements, pace, silence. All of it lands harder when you own the room. That's the key. Another critical point, your energy precedes your words. If you walk in anxious, rushed, or distracted, the room absorbs that energy. Your words will struggle to carry authority. You have a choice. You can bring nerves with you, or you can bring calm, deliberate energy. Authority enters the room first. Notice the power of entry. Leaders don't announce themselves verbally. They arrive. They occupy space. They signal their presence with body, energy, and gaze. The room adjusts automatically. Step 5. Intentional movement. When you walk, move with purpose. No scurrying, no aimless pacing. Every step communicates direction, focus, and control. You don't need their permission. Step 6. Facial expression. Neutral but alert. Slightly softened to prevent intimidation, but not so much that energy leaks. Controlled micro-expressions show you're present, aware, and attentive. Presence before words means that when you finally speak, the room is ready. They're listening. They're tuned in. Your statements hit with gravity. Say it again. Authority enters the room first. Here's a real-world example. Two leaders enter a meeting. One walks in hunched, muttering to themselves, glancing at their phone. The other stands tall, makes eye contact, scans the room, and pauses for 2 seconds before speaking. Who commands attention immediately? Not the first, the second. Presence is the invisible leadership lever. You don't see it, you feel it. You have a choice. You can ignore it, or you can harness it. That's the key. Another tip, anchor yourself before speaking. Plant your feet, breathe, and imagine a line of energy from floor to crown. This posture alone increases perception of authority. When you finally open your mouth, the audience is already aligned to your frame. They're waiting, they're listening, they're primed. You don't need their permission. Let's address overcompensation. Many people think presence means intimidation. They puff up, lean in, or dominate the space aggressively. That's not presence. That's insecurity in disguise. True presence is calm, grounded, and deliberate. It invites respect, not fear. Authority enters the room first. You have a choice. You can bluff with aggression, or you can embody calm command. That's the key. Combine presence with everything you've learned so far. Slow down, eliminate fillers, end sentences with finality. Structure your speech, make statements instead of questions. Presence amplifies all of it. Practice this deliberately. Before any meeting, conversation, or speech, take 2 minutes to stand tall, control your breathing, scan the room with calm, deliberate eye contact, anchor yourself physically, and imagine authority entering before you speak. This rehearsal alone changes perception dramatically. Say it again. Authority enters the room first. When you master presence, you realize something crucial. Words are secondary. Posture, energy, eye contact, stillness, they carry more weight than any argument, statistic, or point you make. You have a choice. You can rely on words alone, or you can prepare your entire self to communicate authority before a single word is uttered. That's the key. Final thought. Leadership is felt before it's heard. People respond to energy, space, and control. They listen more closely, trust more readily, and follow more willingly when presence precedes speech. You don't need their permission. Presence is your first message. Presence is your first decision. Presence is your silent declaration. I am here. I am ready. I lead. Authority enters the room first. You've learned to structure speech. You've learned to slow down and end sentences with finality. You've learned to stop chasing approval and speak with declarative statements. Now you're mastering the invisible skill that makes all of that land effortlessly. Presence. Next, we'll explore how mastering tone of voice turns structured, confident speech into irresistible influence.
Chapter 13. Stop Softening the Truth.
Most people think being kind means softening the truth. It doesn't. It delays impact. It confuses people. It erodes authority. You have a choice. You can cushion your messages, or you can deliver the truth directly. That's the key. Clear is kind. Soft is selfish. Say it again. Clear is kind. Soft is selfish. Think about it. When someone softens a critique, what do they achieve? They avoid immediate discomfort. They preserve their own comfort. They feel polite. But what happens to the listener? Confusion, misinterpretation, delay, mistakes. You don't need their permission. Leadership is about outcomes, not feelings, about clarity, not comfort. Softness may feel pleasant in the moment, but it costs you trust and slows progress. Clear is kind, soft is selfish. Let's look at examples. Instead of saying, "I think maybe you could improve this report a bit," say, "This report needs revisions. Here's what I want changed." Same intention, entirely different impact. One communicates uncertainty, one communicates direction. You have a choice. You can hedge or you can lead. That's the key. Direct truth builds long-term credibility. People know where you stand. They understand expectations. They learn to trust your words. Softening truth trains them to guess, to second-guess, to ignore subtle cues. You don't need their permission. Many people cushion feedback because they fear resistance. They worry about conflict. They think directness will make them unliked. Wrong. Directness is not cruelty. Directness is respect. Respect for the person's time, energy, and growth. Clear is kind, soft is selfish. Here's a practical habit. Remove words that dilute meaning. I think, maybe, possibly, just a suggestion. Every one of these phrases weakens authority, eliminates impact, confuses the listener. You have a choice. You can hedge your statements, or you can own them. That's the key. Softening the truth also encourages repeated mistakes. People don't learn unless they know exactly what went wrong. They need clarity, not sugarcoating. Clear is kind, soft is selfish. Leaders deliver actionable guidance. They give specific instructions. They set clear expectations. They tell the truth plainly. You don't need their permission. Another critical point, timing. Deliver truth promptly, not later. Waiting to soften a blow is worse than delivering it cleanly in the moment. Delay adds confusion. Delay erodes trust. Delay signals indecision. You have a choice. You can delay for comfort, or you can deliver for impact. That's the key. Softness also comes from fear of confrontation. People avoid stating the obvious because they want to be liked, or because they think the truth will hurt relationships. Here's the reality. Relationships built on clarity last longer. Relationships built on avoidance collapse quietly. Clear is kind, soft is selfish. Let's apply this to everyday communication. When delegating, soft, if you have time, maybe you could handle this task. Direct, handle this task today. I expect a report by 5 p.m. When giving feedback, soft, you did okay, but there are a few things you might want to change. Direct, this needs improvement. Here's exactly what to fix. When setting expectations, soft, I hope we can try to get this done by Friday. Direct, this must be done by Friday, no exceptions. See the difference? One softens reality, the other delivers clarity. You have a choice. You can prioritize comfort, or you can prioritize growth. That's the key. Another habit that destroys authority is cushioning truth with compliments. Yes, good job, but here's what's wrong. The compliment becomes noise. It softens the message. People hear the good job more than the corrective instruction. Leaders don't need to soften. They separate acknowledgement from correction. They state clearly what's right, what's wrong, and what needs to change. You don't need their permission. Direct truth also inspires action. People respond to clarity. They act on precise guidance. They adjust behavior. Softness breeds ambiguity. Ambiguity breeds stagnation. Clear is kind. Soft is selfish.
Here's a mental shift. Stop equating kindness with pleasant phrasing. Start equating kindness with honesty, respect, and utility. You have a choice. You can make people feel temporarily good, or you can make them better. That's the key. Direct communication reduces repeated misunderstandings. It reduces confusion in teams. It reduces wasted time, and it increases your credibility. When people know exactly what you mean, they trust you. When they have to guess, they doubt you. You don't need their permission. Another technique: speak with finality when delivering truth. Avoid phrases that leave openings. Avoid hedging. Avoid trailing off. State it clearly. Let it land. Pause. Let the impact settle. Clear is kind. Soft is selfish. You have a choice. You can hedge to avoid discomfort, or you can deliver clarity to create results. That's the key. Remember, the goal is transformation, not feelings, not temporary comfort. Transformation requires truth. Direct truth signals competence, integrity, and leadership. It trains people to trust your words and act decisively. Clear is kind, soft is selfish. You don't need their permission. Finally, integrate this principle with everything you've learned. Structure your speech. Own the room. Speak with finality. Reduce questions. Slow down. Eliminate verbal noise. Direct truth amplifies all these skills. You have a choice. You can continue softening the truth, or you can deliver it cleanly, directly, and consistently. That's the key. You've built a foundation of control, presence, structure, finality, and authority. Now, by stopping softening the truth, you cement your credibility and amplify your influence. Next, we'll explore how mastering rhythm and timing turns direct speech into unstoppable authority.
Chapter 14. Speak from ground, not reaction. Most people think leadership is about being fast, about responding immediately, about showing agility. It isn't. Fast, reactive speech gives power away. You have a choice. You can react to every stimulus, or you can respond from grounded authority. That's the key. Respond, don't react. Say it again. Respond, don't react. Reactive speech is emotional. It's impulsive. It's uncalculated. It lets others set the frame. It hands control of the conversation to whoever yelled, interrupted, or pressured first. Grounded speech is deliberate, controlled, intentional. It sets the frame. It anchors outcomes. It communicates certainty. You don't need their permission. Here's a simple truth. People who react lose authority. People who respond command respect. Reacting is about emotion. Responding is about discipline. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Let's explore reactive speech. You can't believe this report. I can't work with this. Why would you do that? You're wrong again. Notice the energy. It's emotional. It erupts. It gives listeners an opportunity to argue back. It hands control away. Now, grounded speech. I noticed several errors in this report. Here's what must be corrected. This approach didn't achieve the outcome we needed. Let's adjust the plan. Here's what we need to focus on moving forward. Notice the difference. One erupts, one commands, one invites chaos, one anchors clarity. Respond, don't react. You have a choice. You can let anger, frustration, or impatience dictate your words, or you can let discipline dictate them. That's the key. Reactive speech often comes from habit. Most people aren't trained to pause, to breathe, to collect themselves before speaking. They fire first, ask questions later, and hope the impact lands correctly. It rarely does. Grounded speech, by contrast, is intentional. You pause, you breathe, you center yourself, then you speak. Respond, don't react. Here's a drill you can practice. Before replying, count to 3. Take a deep breath. Feel your stance. Then speak. Anchor your words in calm authority. You don't need their permission. Another hallmark of grounded speech, measured tone. Reactive speech often spikes in pitch, volume, and pace. It signals emotional instability. It invites counter-reaction. Grounded speech maintains a steady tone. Even when delivering difficult news, the voice is controlled, clear, deliberate, authoritative. Respond, don't react. Timing also matters. Reactive people jump immediately. Grounded leaders wait for the right moment, not too fast, not too slow, the moment that maximizes impact. You have a choice. You can speak the first thing that comes to mind, or you can choose the words that anchor the room. That's the key. Here's a practical example. A team member challenges your decision in a meeting. Reactive, you don't understand, that's a terrible idea. Grounded, I see your concern. Here's why we chose this approach. Let's discuss how it aligns with our goals. Same scenario, entirely different authority, entirely different outcome. Respond, don't react. Grounded speech also prevents escalation. Reactive words provoke defensive responses. Grounded words invite alignment or respectful dialogue. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Another trap, internal reactivity. Even if you control your words externally, internal reactions can leak through posture, tone, or micro-expressions. Anchor internally first. Your body, breath, and energy must match the control you want to project. Respond, don't react. The next layer, controlling language. Avoid emotionally charged words. Avoid absolute judgments. Speak from observation, outcome, and expectation. Reactive, this is all wrong. Grounded, this section needs revision. Let's address it specifically. Reactive, you never get this right. Grounded, here's the recurring issue. Let's correct it and prevent future errors. You have a choice. You can surrender authority through language, or you can anchor authority through it. That's the key. Even in high-pressure environments, grounded speech works. Take a deep breath, place your feet, scan the room, decide what outcome you want, speak from that ground. Respond, don't react. Another point, reactive speech often aims to feel good for the speaker. It vents frustration, it signals emotion, it satisfies ego temporarily. Grounded speech aims to achieve outcomes, to clarify, to lead. Clear is kind, reactive is selfish. You don't need their permission. Practice this in everyday interactions. When interrupted, don't fire back immediately. When criticized, pause. When frustrated, breathe, anchor, then respond. Respond, don't react. Notice the effect. People listen more carefully, arguments de-escalate, authority rises, confidence radiates. You have a choice. You can surrender authority through language, or you can anchor authority through it. That's the key. Reactive speech also sacrifices clarity. When emotions spike, words become rushed, garbled, or vague. Grounded speech ensures clarity because it emerges from focus, not impulse. Respond, don't react. Here's a mental model. Imagine your words as arrows. Reactive speech shoots arrows everywhere. Some hit, some miss, some wound allies. Grounded speech fires arrows with precision. Every word has trajectory, every point lands, every statement builds authority. You don't need their permission. Finally, combine grounded speech with everything you've learned. Structure your sentences. End with finality. Use declarative statements. Own the room before you speak. Eliminate softening or cushioning. Grounded speech amplifies all of it. You have a choice. You can surrender authority through language, or you can anchor authority through it. That's the key. Respond, don't react. Master this and you control the conversation, the room, and the outcome, without aggression, without noise, without pleading. You don't need their permission. Next, we'll explore the final layer of spoken authority,
how rhythm and pacing turn every statement into unstoppable influence.
Chapter 15. Cut the story, keep the point. Most people think leadership requires storytelling. It doesn't. Stories are entertaining. Stories are memorable. But in leadership, stories can be dangerous. You have a choice. You can narrate endlessly, or you can deliver the point. That's the key. Deliver the result. Say it again. Deliver the result. Stories are a trap. They invite distraction. They allow the listener to wander. They dilute authority. Leaders don't narrate, they conclude. The point matters more than the path, always. You don't need their permission. Think about meetings, presentations, or even one-on-one conversations. Most people spend 80% of their time telling the background story and only 20% delivering the conclusion. The audience checks out long before the point arrives. You have a choice. You can waste attention on context, or you can focus on clarity and action. That's the key. Every sentence must serve the point. Every example must reinforce it. Every pause must highlight it. Anything else is noise. Deliver the result. Stories only work when they accelerate understanding, not when they entertain the speaker, not when they pad insecurity, not when they soften authority. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Let's break down typical storytelling traps. Trap 1. Excessive background. I remember last year we had a project very similar to this one. It was difficult because... Stop. The listener only needs the relevant fact, not the history. Trap 2. Tangential details. The client mentioned several things and also... Stop. Only include details that strengthen your point. Trap 3. Self-aggrandizement. I personally handled this, and it was challenging because I... Stop. Leadership is about clarity and results, not ego performance. You have a choice. You can indulge in storytelling for attention, or you can anchor every word in impact. That's the key. Deliver the result. Here's a practical exercise. Take your next message, an email, a report, a presentation, or even a one-on-one conversation. Ask yourself, what is the single point I want my audience to act on? Then remove everything that doesn't directly support it. Everything else is noise. Everything else is weakness. You don't need their permission. Another habit to break: over-explaining to justify. People often feel the need to prove themselves through narrative. Stop. Focus on the result. Focus on the action. Focus on the point. Deliver the result. Even in critical feedback, this principle applies. Don't narrate every mistake. State what went wrong, state the impact, state what must change. End the story there. You have a choice. You can justify every point endlessly, or you can highlight what matters most. That's the key. Cutting the story also accelerates decision-making. When you deliver only the point, people don't spend energy sifting through irrelevant details. They act faster. They respond immediately. Leadership moves faster than narrative. Deliver the result. Another advantage: credibility. People trust leaders who are concise and pointed. They doubt leaders who meander. Authority is felt in clarity. You don't need their permission. Even in motivational contexts, stories must be brief and functional. The lesson must land immediately. Don't allow personal anecdotes to dominate. Don't dilute impact for emotional gratification. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Here's a tactical formula. State the point first. Give one supporting example if needed. End with the actionable conclusion.
No deviations, no digressions, no fluff. Deliver the result. You have a choice. You can enjoy telling your story, or you can ensure your message is heard, understood, and acted upon. That's the key. Even when nervous, focus on the point. Nervous leaders ramble. Controlled leaders deliver. Controlled leaders inspire action instantly. Deliver the result. Repetition is crucial. Reinforce your point 3 times if necessary, at the start, mid, and end, but always succinctly. Never meander, never cushion, never apologize for brevity. You don't need their permission. Final thought. The audience doesn't remember the narrative. They remember the clarity, the direction, and the outcome. Your stories are only useful if they accelerate understanding, not distract from it. Deliver the result. You've learned to structure speech, own presence, reduce questions, speak with authority, avoid softening truth, and respond rather than react. Now it's time to integrate this final layer. Eliminate the fluff, cut the story, and make every word count. Next, we'll explore how rhythm and timing turn your direct, structured speech into unshakable influence.
Chapter 16. Your tone is your signature. Most people underestimate the power of tone. They think it's about what they say. They focus on words. They ignore how those words land. It's a mistake. You have a choice. You can rely solely on content, or you can command with tone. That's the key. Same tone, every room. Say it again. Same tone, every room. Tone is the invisible signature of authority. It communicates confidence, control, and clarity before the listener even processes the words. Consistency in tone creates predictability and trust. People know what to expect when you speak. They can rely on you, not guess about your emotional state. You don't need their permission. Imagine 2 leaders delivering the same message. One's tone fluctuates, sharp, soft, fast, slow, reactive to emotion. The other's is steady, anchored, deliberate. Who do you follow? Who inspires action? Same tone, every room. Here's a critical truth. Your tone is more memorable than your content. Say it again. Your tone is more memorable than your content. A flat or inconsistent tone signals uncertainty. A controlled tone signals command. A leader's tone is predictable, reliable, and anchored. You have a choice. You can let your mood dictate how you speak, or you can anchor your tone regardless of circumstance. That's the key. Leaders sound the same in calm and conflict. They don't spike in anger. They don't drop into insecurity. They maintain presence through vocal control. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Let's break this down. 1. Calm situations. Even when everything is fine, maintain clarity and authority in your tone. Avoid casual sloppiness or over-familiarity. Every word should carry weight. 2. High-pressure situations. When others panic, tone determines who leads. Slow, deliberate, consistent tone cuts through chaos. People follow calm authority. They resist reacting impulsively. Same tone, every room. You don't need their permission. Another key point, tone conveys certainty. Even mediocre content can be amplified by tone. Even strong content can be diminished by poor tone. Tone is the delivery mechanism for authority. You have a choice. You can speak with uneven tone and hope your words land, or you can control tone to make every word hit with gravity. That's the key. Repetition is crucial. Train your voice. Calm, deliberate, anchored, consistent. Say it again. Same tone, every room. Practice helps. Record yourself. Listen for pitch fluctuations. Adjust speed. adjust volume, anchor vowels, speak as if your presence precedes your words. You don't need their permission. Tone also communicates emotion without surrendering authority. Confidence, concern, urgency, and decisiveness can all be embedded in tone without over-explaining. It's not about being loud, it's about being consistent. Let's examine pitfalls. Pitfall 1. Reactive tone. Shifts in tone due to emotion signal instability. People follow whoever seems in control. Reactivity loses control. Pitfall 2. Monotone. A flat, unvarying tone bores listeners. It signals disengagement. Authority is lost. Pitfall 3. Overemphasis. Over-exaggeration to signal importance signals insecurity. It feels artificial. People sense it. You have a choice. You can let tone fluctuate uncontrollably, or you can anchor tone to authority and intention. That's the key. Here's a simple exercise. Take a sentence you say often. Repeat it 3 times. 1. Emotionally reactive. 2. Monotone. 3. Controlled, steady, deliberate. Notice the difference in perception. Only the controlled version conveys authority consistently. Same tone, every room. Another layer. Tone sets rhythm and pace. Words delivered with anchored tone feel measured, intentional, and authoritative. Words delivered with erratic tone feel impulsive and uncontrolled. You don't need their permission. Even disagreements or confrontation should follow tone discipline. Reactive. You can't be serious. Grounded. I see your point. Here's how we'll proceed. Both convey feedback, but one escalates, the other commands attention and maintains authority. Respond, don't react. Tone also conveys finality. When ending sentences, lowering or grounding tone signals conclusion. Listeners absorb it as certainty, even subconsciously. Same tone, every room. Let's integrate with prior lessons. Structure speech. Speak with finality. Reduce fillers. Own presence. Respond, don't react. Tone amplifies every element. You have a choice. You can speak with perilous fluctuations, or you can command with vocal discipline. That's the key. Repetition matters. Train your voice daily. Practice statements, directives, and corrections with anchored tone. Record, replay, adjust, repeat. You don't need their permission. Tone also communicates confidence without words. Even silence, when paired with controlled tone before speaking, projects authority. Your tone precedes your words. It sets the frame. It primes the listener. It makes every statement land. Same tone, every room. Here's a practical tip. Before any speech or conversation, take one deep breath. Anchor your voice. Speak the first sentence deliberately. Your tone will cascade naturally throughout the interaction. You have a choice. You can ignore tone and hope words suffice, or you can master tone and elevate every word you speak. That's the key. Consistency builds trust. Trust builds authority. Authority builds influence. Same tone, every room. Final thought. The words you choose are only as powerful as the tone that delivers them. Even the most structured speech, the clearest statements, and the strongest presence can be undermined by inconsistent tone. Anchor tone. Control pitch. Control rhythm. Control volume. Every word lands with authority. You don't need their permission. Same tone, every room. You've learned to structure, slow down, end sentences with finality, reduce fillers, own the room, respond, don't react, and deliver the point. Now you add the final layer, vocal signature. Anchor tone, elevate every interaction, command attention before a word is fully processed.
Next, we'll combine all of these principles to create unstoppable influence in any setting.
Chapter 17. Speak as if you belong. Most people think they need permission to speak up. They pause, they hedge, they wait for approval. It's a mistake. You have a choice. You can ask to be heard, or you can speak as if you already belong. That's the key. You don't arrive, you operate. Say it again. You don't arrive, you operate. Belonging is assumed, not requested. Leaders never preface statements with, "I hope it's okay if I say this," or "Do you mind if I share?" They operate from ownership. They don't enter a conversation. They engage it. They shape it. You don't need their permission. Here's the truth. Hesitation signals insecurity. It diminishes authority. It communicates uncertainty before your words even land. You have a choice. You can apologize for your voice, or you can own it fully. That's the key. Leaders speak as if they've always belonged. They never signal that their ideas are conditional. Their presence is expected. Their contribution is assumed. You don't arrive. You operate. Let's break this down in practice. Before you speak, align mentally. 1. This space is yours to contribute. 2. Your insights have value. 3. Your presence is not negotiable. Say it again internally. You don't arrive. You operate. Notice the difference. When you operate from ownership, your voice carries weight. Pauses gain impact. Statements land with authority. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Most people preface statements with uncertainty words. I think, maybe, just, stop it, remove them. They signal that you are asking permission to exist. You have a choice. You can qualify your voice, or you can claim it fully. That's the key. Another layer, posture and energy reinforce belonging. Lean in slightly, keep your chest open, ground your feet, maintain eye contact. Your body communicates that you are present and entitled to speak. You don't need their permission. When you combine grounded posture with anchored tone and declarative statements, you speak as if you belong, even in rooms where you're the newest, youngest, or least known. You have a choice. You can let your environment intimidate you, or you can assert ownership regardless of circumstance. That's the key. Even when challenged, operate from belonging. Reactive speech undermines ownership. Pause. Anchor yourself. Speak from authority, not emotion. Respond, don't react. You don't arrive. You operate. Here's a common scenario. You enter a meeting late. Others are already talking. Most people hesitate, mumble, or wait for a gap. Leaders do something different. They observe, position themselves, and contribute with confidence. The room doesn't give them permission. They take the space with authority. You have a choice. You can shrink to fit the room, or you can occupy it intentionally. That's the key. Another pitfall, over-explaining to justify presence. I'm new, but I don't know much, but stop. It signals insecurity. Speak only from your perspective and your responsibility. You don't need to justify belonging. You don't need their permission. Every statement you make should assume relevance. Every observation you give should assume weight. Every directive you offer should assume acceptance until proven otherwise. You have a choice. You can preface, hedge, apologize, or you can speak with ownership. That's the key. Repetition matters. Say it internally before speaking. You don't arrive. You operate. You don't arrive. You operate. You don't arrive. You operate. It anchors your energy, your tone, and your posture.
This principle also applies to written communication. Emails, reports, and proposals should read as if you are the authority, not a petitioner. Avoid tentative language. Deliver conclusions and recommendations confidently. You have a choice. You can write like a request, or you can write like a leader. That's the key. Even small group conversations matter. Speak as if your perspective is necessary. Lead with clarity. Don't soften. Don't wait for nods. Assume your voice deserves attention. You don't arrive. You operate. Another insight: operating from belonging is contagious. Others will mirror your confidence. They respond to ownership with respect. They elevate their own contributions. The room aligns with the person who assumes authority naturally. You have a choice. You can hesitate and wait for permission, or you can model ownership and shape the environment. That's the key. Let's integrate with prior lessons. Own the room before speaking. Structure sentences with clarity. Speak with finality. Anchor tone. Respond, don't react. Now add ownership. Speak as if you belong. Make every word carry weight and legitimacy. You don't need their permission. Here's a practical exercise. Before any conversation, silently affirm: 1. I belong here. 2. My voice matters. 3. I operate from ownership. Repeat it mentally 3 times. Anchor posture and tone, then speak. You have a choice. You can wait for validation, or you can claim authority now. That's the key. Another critical point: operating from belonging eliminates self-doubt in real time. You don't hedge, you don't apologize, you don't diminish. Confidence manifests naturally when you assume your voice is expected. You don't arrive, you operate. Final thought: leadership is not about earning a seat at the table. Leadership is about owning the space you already have. Speak with ownership, and the room responds. Speak as if you belong, and people follow naturally. You have a choice. You can wait for approval, or you can act from authority. That's the key. You don't arrive, you operate. Next, we'll explore how to combine all these principles: structure, tone, presence, authority, clarity, and ownership into unstoppable influence in any conversation or setting.
Chapter 18. The Power of Saying Nothing. Most people fear silence. They fill it with words, explanations, apologies, stories, filler. It's a mistake. You have a choice. You can panic in silence, or you can use it strategically. That's the key. Silence works for you. Say it again. Silence works for you. Strategic silence is one of the underutilized tools of influence. It creates space. It forces others to think. It forces others to respond. You don't need their permission. Most people rush to speak to avoid discomfort, but in doing so, they give away authority. They signal insecurity. They signal urgency to please. You have a choice. You can fill gaps with noise, or you can anchor authority with silence. That's the key. Here's the principle. People hate unresolved tension. They feel compelled to fill it. When you pause, they speak. When you hold back, they react. Silence works for you. Reactive speech often sabotages influence. Leaders pause instead. They let silence land. They let tension do the work. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Consider meetings, negotiations, or interviews. A pause after a key statement makes your words weighty. It signals thought, confidence, and command. People lean in. They listen closer. They respect the gap. You have a choice. You can speak immediately to relieve tension, or you can let silence amplify your authority. That's the key. Another layer: silence signals patience. People assume that if you're calm enough to wait, you are in control. You don't need to justify yourself. You don't need to over-explain.
You don't need to perform. Silence works for you. Here's a practical technique. Deliver your point and then pause. Count 3 seconds in your mind. Observe reactions. Don't fill. Don't rush. The room adjusts. Attention sharpens. Influence grows. You have a choice. You can fear silence and rush to speak, or you can let it work in your favor. That's the key. Silence also protects against mistakes. Reactive speakers often overshare or misstate. Pausing creates a buffer. You process before responding. You respond intentionally, not impulsively. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Another insight: silence is a frame. It sets expectation. It shifts power. People interpret silence as deliberation. They assign weight to what is unsaid. They sense control without coercion. Silence works for you. Let's look at a common scenario: negotiation. You make an offer. The other party hesitates. Most people immediately justify, explain, or sweeten the deal. They give away leverage. Leaders pause. They let the silence linger. They watch, observe, and let the other party fill the gap. Often the other side adjusts in your favor without you saying a word. You have a choice. You can rush to justify your position, or you can let silence compel the response you want. That's the key. Another layer: silence communicates confidence. When people talk too much, they appear anxious, uncertain, or insecure. Silence signals clarity. It signals purpose. It signals that your words are measured, not impulsive. Silence works for you. Even in conflict, silence is powerful. Reactive speech escalates. Strategic pauses de-escalate. They make others lean in. They command attention. They demonstrate control. You have a choice. You can react instantly, or you can pause, assess, and respond deliberately. That's the key. Another tip: silence magnifies verbal impact. Words that follow a well-timed pause carry authority. Phrases like "this is non-negotiable" or "here's what we will do" land harder after a gap than if they were spoken immediately. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Silence also trains your audience to listen. When people know you won't rush to fill the space, they adjust, they pay attention, they value your words, they anticipate. Silence works for you. Here's an advanced strategy: combine silence with presence. Anchor your posture, maintain eye contact, breathe deeply, don't fidget. Let your energy occupy the gap. The room senses command without noise. You have a choice. You can fidget, mumble, or rush to speak, or you can hold the space with discipline. That's the key. Silence is also a tool for introspection. When you pause before responding, you ensure your words are aligned with purpose, not impulse. You avoid regret. You avoid dilution. You avoid surrendering authority. Silence works for you. Even in group discussions, practicing silence changes dynamics. Leaders who pause naturally invite others to contribute, but on the leader's terms. The discussion flows, but power remains anchored. You have a choice. You can compete with volume, or you can command attention with quiet. That's the key. Another point: silence reinforces clarity. People tend to speak to cover gaps in understanding. When you remain silent, they clarify, elaborate, or confirm themselves. You guide the conversation indirectly while conserving authority. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Here's a practical drill. Make a declarative statement. Hold your position. Count 3 to 5 seconds silently. Observe reactions. Respond only if necessary. Repeat this in meetings, negotiations, and daily interactions. Gradually, it becomes instinctive. Silence works for you. Remember, mastery of silence is mastery of influence. You set the pace. You set the frame. You shape outcomes without noise. You have a choice. You can fear silence and fill it with unnecessary words, or you can wield it as a tool of command. That's the key. Final thought: silence is not emptiness. Silence is power. Silence is authority.
Silence is control. Use it deliberately, consistently, and confidently. Silence works for you. Next, we'll explore how to combine all elements: structure, tone, presence, ownership, clarity, and strategic silence to speak with unstoppable authority in every context.
Chapter 19. Train your voice like a weapon. Most people believe leadership speech is natural. They think authority comes from words alone. They think charisma is innate. They're wrong. You have a choice. You can leave your voice to chance, or you can train it like a weapon. That's the key. Rehearsed beats raw. Say it again. Rehearsed beats raw. Authority is not a feeling. It is a practice. It is discipline. Your voice is your tool. How you wield it determines whether you command attention or lose it. You don't need their permission. Leaders do not rely on instinct alone. They prepare, they rehearse, they control every syllable, every inflection, every pause. They train their voice to hit with precision. You have a choice. You can mumble, fluctuate, and improvise, or you can speak with trained authority every time. That's the key. Here's the principle. Repetition builds automatic authority. The more you practice statements, directives, and difficult conversations, the more confident and commanding you become. Rehearsed beats raw. Even when nervous, your voice is steady. Even under pressure, your message lands. Even when challenged, your tone carries power. You don't need their permission. Most people speak poorly because they leave it untrained. They assume natural expression is sufficient. It's not. Authority is learned. Confidence is cultivated. Precision is practiced. You have a choice. You can leave your vocal impact to chance, or you can train every sentence to hit like a tool of influence. That's the key. Let's break this down. Number 1, pitch control. Avoid high-pitched urgency that signals insecurity. Anchor your voice low enough to convey authority. Practice descending sentence endings. Number 2, volume control. Speak clearly, loud enough to be heard but never shout. Authority lies in measured projection. Number 3, pacing. Fast speech signals panic. Slow, deliberate pacing signals confidence. Pause strategically to emphasize key points. Rehearsed beats raw. You have a choice. You can speak without intention, or you can wield each word like a precision instrument. That's the key. Another insight: repetition is your friend. Repeating key phrases anchors them in your mind and your listener's mind. Statements like, "You have a choice." That's the key. You don't need their permission. Practice them until they roll naturally off your tongue with conviction. You don't need their permission. Training also includes practicing difficult conversations, feedback, conflict, negotiations. They require precise articulation. Speak slowly, deliberately, and with finality. Rehearse common scenarios aloud. Rehearsed beats raw. Even storytelling, when necessary, should be practiced. Trim unnecessary words. Anchor the message. Deliver with tone, pacing, and presence rehearsed in advance. You have a choice. You can improvise endlessly, or you can rehearse until execution is flawless. That's the key. Another layer. Your voice conveys dominance before content even matters. Anchored tone, controlled pitch, measured pacing, all practiced, signal command. Listeners respond instinctively. Rehearsed beats raw. Here's a tactical exercise. Write down 3 key statements you frequently use. Speak them aloud 10 times each. Record yourself. Listen. Adjust tone, pitch, and cadence. Repeat daily. You have a choice. You can ignore this, or you can create automatic authority. That's the key. Also, practice breathing. Proper diaphragmatic breathing stabilizes your voice, reduces pitch spikes, and supports clarity. Anchor each statement with a breath. Control energy. Control projection. You don't need their permission. Training your voice also builds resilience under pressure. When interrupted, challenged, or rushed, rehearsed speech allows you to respond calmly and clearly. You avoid filler words, hedges, and nervous fluctuations. Rehearsed beats raw. Another insight: combine vocal training with posture, presence, and timing. Authority is holistic. Your body, your breath, and your voice all deliver a unified message. Practice all three together. You have a choice. You can leave impact to chance, or you can craft it meticulously. That's the key. Even in spontaneous moments, trained speech shines. Practice doesn't make you robotic. It makes your authority instinctive. You respond with precision, not panic. You speak with control, even in uncertainty. Rehearsed beats raw. Here's another practical tip. Practice objections, challenges, and critiques aloud. Practice phrasing, tone, and pauses. Record, replay, adjust. You're training the brain and the voice to react with authority automatically. You don't need their permission. Repetition also builds rhythm. Rhythm communicates confidence. A controlled cadence practiced consistently becomes magnetic. Listeners unconsciously align with your timing, your pauses, your emphasis. You have a choice. You can leave rhythm to chance, or you can own it. That's the key. Another exercise: choose 3 phrases that encapsulate your leadership principles. Repeat them daily. Deliver with tone, pacing, and presence. Over time, these phrases become instinctive weapons of influence. Rehearsed beats raw. Even silence can be practiced. Pauses after statements, before responses, or when delivering difficult news, all can be rehearsed to create maximum impact. You have a choice. You can speak impulsively, or you can wield voice and silence deliberately. That's the key. Final thought: authority is not given. Authority is crafted. Every leader who commands attention, respect, and compliance has practiced their craft. They have trained their voice like a weapon. They rehearse, they repeat, they anchor tone, they control rhythm, they dominate presence. Rehearsed beats raw. You have a choice. You can leave influence to luck, or you can train every word, every pause, every breath to deliver maximum authority. That's the key. You don't need their permission. Next, we'll conclude by integrating all principles: structure, tone, presence, ownership, silence, and trained speech into unstoppable communication mastery.
Chapter 20. Speak once, mean it forever. Most people speak carelessly. They hedge, they backtrack, they over-explain, they apologize. It's a mistake. You have a choice. You can speak to please others, or you can speak to command respect. That's the key. Your word is your position. Say it again. Your word is your position. Every sentence you speak sets a precedent. Every commitment, suggestion, or opinion communicates your authority or your insecurity. Leaders understand this. They speak once, they mean it forever. You don't need their permission. Inconsistent language erodes trust. People remember when you flip-flop. They remember when you qualify, apologize, or hedge. Words that are contradicted or softened weaken your authority. You have a choice. You can speak without ownership, or you can speak once and stand behind it. That's the key. Here's the principle. When you deliver a statement, commit. Let it land. Let it hold. Avoid revising it publicly. Avoid second-guessing. Let your voice, tone, and body signal conviction. Your word is your position. Repetition matters. Repeat this internally before speaking. I stand by my words. I mean what I say. My word is my position. Say it again. Your word is your position. Leaders understand the gravity of language. When they declare a decision, people adjust. They execute. They respect. When you hedge, the opposite happens.
Authority diminishes, compliance weakens, attention drifts. You don't need their permission. Consider everyday examples, meetings, negotiations, or casual conversations. A tentative "I think we should" invites debate. A declarative "we will" commands alignment. The difference is ownership. The difference is authority. You have a choice. You can hedge, soften, and explain endlessly, or you can declare, anchor, and own every word. That's the key. Another insight: standing by your words builds credibility over time. Consistency compounds. Every fulfilled promise, every firm stance, every clearly expressed expectation reinforces your reputation. People trust the speaker who delivers, not the one who apologizes. Your word is your position. Here's a tactical exercise. Identify statements or commitments you make daily. Practice delivering them once, clearly and with finality. Avoid softening, qualifying, or backtracking in subsequent conversations. Observe how influence shifts when words are anchored in conviction. You don't need their permission. This principle extends to difficult conversations. Confrontations, corrections, and boundaries require firm language. When you speak with conviction, others take notice. Hesitation invites debate, undermines your authority, and prolongs conflict. You have a choice. You can apologize for boundaries, or you can assert them clearly and permanently. That's the key. Another layer: your voice, tone, and body reinforce permanence. Deliver statements with anchored posture, steady tone, and measured pacing. Avoid filler words. Avoid rising intonation. Let words land as final. Your word is your position. Even when circumstances change, clarity matters. Being adaptable does not mean retracting your statements publicly. Leaders adjust behind the scenes, but maintain external consistency. Their word remains their position. You have a choice. You can shift publicly to avoid discomfort, or you can adapt privately while standing firm publicly. That's the key. Here's a real-world example. A manager sets a deadline. The team complains. Most managers cave, extend deadlines, or apologize. A leader repeats the original plan once, reinforces expectation, and supports the team with resources. The deadline holds. Respect and credibility grow. Authority is maintained. Your word is your position. Repetition builds habit. Repeatedly practice anchoring statements. Deliver phrases with intentional tone. Stand physically anchored. Pause strategically. Let your message land once and firmly. You don't need their permission. Another important point is clarity is kindness. When you speak once and mean it forever, others know where they stand. You reduce confusion. You minimize miscommunication. You streamline execution. It's not about flaws, it's about discipline. Even in casual interactions, anchor statements. Simple phrases like, "I will handle this," "This is our direction," "We move forward this way." Delivered once with presence, set the frame. They reinforce respect, reliability, and authority. Your word is your position. Here's a practical drill. Choose 3 commitments you make this week. State them once, clearly and firmly. Avoid hedging or qualifying. Observe how people respond and follow through. You have a choice. You can speak tentatively, hoping people comply, or you can speak decisively, commanding alignment. That's the key. Final thought: leadership is not about volume or frequency. It is about precision. Speak once, mean it forever. Your word establishes your authority. Your consistency builds trust. Your presence reinforces permanence.
Every word you commit to anchors your position. Every follow-through compounds influence. Every declarative statement strengthens credibility. You don't need their permission. Your word is your position. You have a choice. You can speak casually, hedge, and adjust endlessly, or you can speak once with conviction and stand behind it. That's the key. Congratulations, you've completed the journey. You've learned to own your presence, structure your speech, anchor your tone, speak with clarity and finality, reduce verbal noise, harness silence, train your voice, speak once and mean it forever. Now it's time to act. Every interaction is an opportunity to practice. Every conversation is a stage. Every statement is a measure of your authority. Your word is your position. Stand behind it, command with it, never retreat from it. This is how leaders speak. This is how influence is forged. You have a choice. Speak deliberately. Speak once. Mean it forever.
Leadership is not granted, it's earned. Every word you speak is either building your authority or dismantling it. You don't need more vocabulary. You need fewer words delivered with certainty. Stop explaining. Stop softening. Stop asking for permission. Speak slower. Speak clearer. Speak like decisions are already made. Because when you change how you speak, people listen differently. And when people listen differently, they treat you differently. Starting today, notice every sentence before it leaves your mouth. Strip it down, ground it, deliver it. This is your challenge. For the next 30 days, speak only what you're willing to stand behind. No fillers, no apologies, no retreat. Talk like a leader and watch the world respond.